Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. The United States says it is very unlikely that the evacuation from Afghanistan will be completed by August 31st deadline. In a briefing, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said there are high numbers of Americans yet to be evacuated. President Joe Biden is expected to decide on whether to extend the evacuation deadline today. Indian troops have martyred 2 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir Sopore district. The youths were targeted in a military operation in Beth-Sir area of the district. The occupying troops have killed 4 Kashmiris in the past 24 hours. Israeli forces have martyred a Palestinian teen in a raid on a refugee camp near the Nablus city in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent said the occupation forces stormed the Balata refugee camp and opened live fire. Earlier in Gaza, Israeli fighter jets launched air raids on Khan Yunis city, violating the May ceasefire with Hamas yet again. India has recorded 354 deaths from coronavirus and more than 25,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 91 more people lost their lives to the virus and over 4,000 tested positive overnight. Globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 212 million, while the death toll is over 4.4 million. Well, these were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. The United States says it is very unlikely that the evacuation from Afghanistan will be completed by August 31st deadline. In a briefing, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said there are high numbers of Americans yet to be evacuated. President Joe Biden is expected to decide on whether to extend the evacuation deadline today. A NATO official said evacuations were being conducted on war footing as foreign forces try to meet the deadline. Meanwhile, G7 leaders are expected to decide on whether or not to officially recognize in a meeting. They will also deliberate upon whether to seek an extension to the evacuation deadline. However, the Taliban say any extension would be a violation of an agreed deal and one of consequences. Meanwhile, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington is discussing future control of Kabul airport with the Taliban. Now, for the latest updates, we have with us Sumaira Khan, our correspondent. She is updating us from the Kabul International Airport. Now, Sumaira, what is the situation at the airport right now? Thank you, Sumaira Khan, our correspondent in Kabul, for updating us from the Kabul International Airport. Now, moving on, Prime Minister Imran Khan says peace and stability in Afghanistan are vital for Pakistan and the entire region. The Prime Minister said this in a phone call with his Belgian counterpart, Alexander De Croo. Imran Khan underscored the importance of an inclusive political settlement for the stabilization in Kabul. The Belgian Prime Minister appreciated Pakistan's support and facilitation for evacuation endeavours. Meanwhile, Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry said instability in Afghanistan will lead to a refugee influx in Pakistan. In an interview with BBC, he said Islamabad is working closely with regional and international powers for an inclusive Afghan government. Chaudhry noted that India used Afghan territory for funding the banned terrorist organisation Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now, Indian troops have martyred 2 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir Sopore district. The youths were targeted during a military operation in the Pet Seer area of the district. The operation was going on till last reports came in. The occupying troops have killed 4 Kashmiris in the past 24 hours. On Monday, the Indian forces martyred 2 youths in the Srinagar district. Over 400 Kashmiris have been killed since New Delhi's illegal revocation of the Valley's special status in August 2019. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have martyred a Palestinian teen in a raid on a refugee camp near the Nablus city in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent said the occupation forces stormed the Balata camp and opened live fire. Witnesses said the intruders also arrested a young Palestinian from the camp, while a teenager was also detained from East Jerusalem. Earlier in Gaza, Israeli fighter jets launched air raids on Khan Yunis city, violating the May ceasefire with Hamas yet again. In a tweet, Israeli army claimed to have struck a military compound and a rocket launch site belonging to Hamas. There were no immediate reports of casualties in the air attacks. Now, the Arab coalition says it has destroyed another explosive-laden drone launched by Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said Yemeni rebels attempted to target Khamis Mushaid city. The 10 Houthis continue to deliberately and systematically target civilian infrastructure. Earlier, the coalition had intercepted another drone launched by the rebels towards the same city. Now, Saudi Arabia and Russia have reached an agreement aimed at developing areas of bilateral military cooperation. Saudi Deputy Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman said he signed the deal with his Russian counterpart. In a tweet, Khalid said he also discussed regional stability and security with the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Shoigu said Russia intends for intensive development of military technical cooperation with Saudi Arabia. This came at the event of the Army 2021 International Military Forum underway in Moscow. Earlier, the Russian defense officials also voiced readiness to produce armaments and military hardware on the UAE's territory. India has recorded 354 deaths from coronavirus and more than 25,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the COVID-19 death toll is over 4.4 million, while the caseload has surpassed 212 million. More details about the pandemic in this report. The deadly pandemic keeps troubling the socio-economic fabric of the society while governments move to intensify their inoculation drives. Canada's British Columbia province is bringing in a vaccine card for residents to get access to a number of activities. In the US, the Federal Drug Regulating Authority granted full approval to the Pfizer vaccine, making it the first to secure such validation. However, transparency advocates criticize FDA's decision of not holding a formal advisory committee meeting to discuss Pfizer's application for full approval. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden made a fresh pitch to vaccine skeptics to get the shot to fight the relentless pandemic.
As I mentioned before, I've imposed vaccination requirements that will reach millions of Americans. Today, I'm calling on more companies, I should say, in the private sector to step up with vaccine requirements that'll reach millions more people. If you're a business leader, a nonprofit leader, a state or local leader who has been waiting for full FDA approval to require vaccinations, I call on you now to do that. Require it. Do what I did last month. Require your employees to get vaccinated or face strict requirements.
New Zealand has recorded 41 daily cases, its highest increase since April last year, but authorities said the numbers are not rising exponentially and the majority of the cases are in Auckland. In Southeast Asia, Vietnam deployed soldiers to help enforce a strict lockdown in Ho Chi Minh City to contain the rising infections. In Kenya, hundreds of people from the iconic Maasai community queued up to get vaccinated as the East African nation confronts a severe fourth wave.
I will go and tell people, especially my age mates, some of whom are here, this disease adversely affects us old people. I will tell them to come here to Bizel Health Center to get vaccinated.
The Asian Development Bank says the pandemic may have pushed as many as 80 million people in the developing Asia continent into extreme poverty last year. In France, health authorities said the number of people hospitalized for COVID-19 is at the highest level in more than 2 months. Meanwhile, coronavirus has claimed 91 more lives in Pakistan. The Health Ministry says the death tally has reached 25,094. It says 4,075 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. Authorities say the positivity rate of overnight infections declined to 6.79%. Pakistan has so far registered over 1.13 million cases, while more than a million have recovered. The ministry says active cases have exceeded 91,000, of which more than 5,500 are in critical condition. Poland has announced plans to fence its border with Belarus and double the number of troops there. Defense Minister Mariusz Błaszczak said this height of the solid fence will be 8.2 feet. In a news conference, he said the number of troops at the border will be doubled to 2,000. Earlier, the Prime Minister of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia called on the United Nations to intervene in the dispute with Belarus. In a joint statement, they said using immigrants to destabilize neighboring countries constitutes a breach of international law. This comes as Poland reports sharp increases in migrants from the countries like Iraq and Afghanistan trying to flee unrest. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, 13 aid groups have warned that more than 12 million people in Syria and Iraq are losing access to water, food and electricity. They say rising temperatures, record low levels of rainfall and drought are depriving people of drinking and agricultural water. In a statement, they said the two neighboring countries are in need of rapid action to combat severe water shortages. According to the UN, Syria is facing the worst drought in 70 years, while Iraq is facing the second driest season in 40 years. In a Norwegian Refugee Council officials said the collapse of water and food production for Iraqis and Syrians is imminent. They said the unfolding water crisis will soon become a catastrophe, pushing more people into displacement. Now, in the U.S. state of Tennessee, rescue teams are continuing to search for dozens of people missing after record downpours and flash flooding. At least 22 people have died over the weekend after floodwaters wreaked havoc across the state. President Joe Biden has declared a major disaster exists in the state and ordered federal aid. Authorities say 40 people are unaccounted for in the Humphreys County west of Nashville. They said rescue teams are using dogs to find people. Meanwhile, residents across the waterlogged northeast began clearing mud after deluges dropped by Tropical Storm Henry. Its remnants threatened further flooding in New England as the system made a slow trek back to the sea. Now, in the U.S. state of California, crews are lighting backfires to deprive the Caldo of fuel as it rages for a 9th consecutive day. The blaze has burned through 30,000 acres over the weekend alone. This report has details. As parts of the world receive record downpours, triggering devastating flash flooding, raging wildfires continue to eat up acreages globally, reinforcing the urgency to tackle climate change. In California, fire crews are creating a perimeter for the advancing Caldo fire. Authorities say the fire has charred 104,000 acres and is only 5% contained so far. Meanwhile, down south in Brazil, firefighters struggled to control a blaze at Jaqueire State Park in Sao Paulo. Authorities say 3 active fires have burned through more than 1,200 hectares. They noted dry weather and high temperatures helped the flames spread. Over in Europe, wildfires in southern France have been brought under control but are yet to be extinguished. Some 400 crews are battling the flames, which have burned through 8,000 hectares and claimed 2 lives. In Greece, a new blaze has erupted in a forested area that was devastated by flames last week, prompting evacuations from 2 villages. Now, China's Hebei province has kept forging ahead in the development of both rural and urban areas over recent years. President Xi Jinping visited the province and inspected major forest farms in Chengde, city of the province. Over the years, Hebei has made leaps ahead in socio-economic development, rural revitalization and the modernization of agriculture. It has registered more than 35 billion kilograms of annual food yielding for 8 years, while local dairy production has topped national lists for 7 years. In the field of manufacturing, Hebei's Tangshan city, widely known as the cradle of China's modern time industrial field, has also been flourishing. With Qinhuangdao Port, Tangshan Port and Huangguang Port, Hebei, as a vital hub, China's logistic base is merging into the Belt and Road Initiative. It has also become a beacon of global ecological management, and the province's total installed capacity of wind and solar power has ranked 3rd in the country. The Saihamba forest farm in the province, with more than 76,666 hectares of trees, was rewarded United Nations Champions of the Earth Award. At the moment, Hebei's Shangqinkao city has also completed the construction of venues for the Beijing 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. Now, Asian shares are trading higher, boosted by a near-record rise on Wall Street. Stocks gained momentum following the US's FDA's full approval of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has jumped close to 2% to lead the gains. Seoul's Kospi added nearly 1.5%. Stocks in mainland China advanced over 1%, while the Nikkei 225 in Japan soared more than 0.75%. Australia's ASX 200 was up marginally. Also in cricket, a 3-match ODI series between Afghanistan and Pakistan has been postponed till next year over logistical challenges. The series was shifted to Pakistan after Sri Lanka announced a 10-day lockdown due to rising COVID-19 cases. But the Afghan Cricket Board said it is not possible to hold the series under Afghanistan's current circumstances. The series is part of the ICC's qualifying league for the 2023 World Cup scheduled in India. In football, West Ham United have thrashed 10-man Leicester City 4-1 to climb to the top of Premier League standings. Michail Antonio scored a brace to become their all-time Premier League top scorer. Pablo Fornal said Banama opened the scoring for the Hammers at London Stadium. They were followed by Antonio, who found the net twice to wrap up an impressive win for David Moyes' side. It is only the second time the Hammers won their opening 2 fixtures of a Premier League campaign. Earlier, the EPL announced that 16 players and club staff tested positive for coronavirus over the past week. In football, Switzerland playmaker Xherdan Shaqiri has completed over $13 million move from Liverpool to Lyon. The 29-year-old has signed a 3-year contract with the League One club. Lyon said the deal is worth over €7 million plus a possible $5.8 million in add-ons. Shaqiri scored 8 goals in 63 appearances for Liverpool and won the Premier League and Champions League. He becomes the second Liverpool player to make a move to a League One club this summer. Earlier, Georginio Wijnaldum joined Paris Saint-Germain after his Reds contract expired. Now, the Tokyo Paralympics are set to begin tonight following a one-year postponement due to the coronavirus pandemic. However, the questions over the safety of participating athletes and the Japanese public remains unanswered. Tokyo will become the first city to host the Paralympics twice, having staged the 1964 edition. This year's Games will be the world's largest event for the athletes with disabilities. About 4,400 athletes from about 160 countries will take center stage through 5th of September. The Paralympics will feature 539 medal events across 22 sports. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the world. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.